everyone, and welcome to Let's Just Do This, the program where we bring change makers to the table to have soulful conversations to help empower you to live your best life. I'm Margaret Wallis-Duffy, and along beside me is my co-host, Mr. Todd Miller.
We're having soulful conversations, and it's not even Sunday.
Indeed.
We are sharing our passions.
We are sharing our passions and learning from one another, and you know, that's what this table is all about. It's about learning from one another, being better together. And I got to tell you, I want to tell you a little story about today's guest. A few weeks ago, I had the pleasure of emceeing the Circle of Hope, an amazing gala to bring people that are dealing with cancer together and to provide them hope and support. This beautiful soul was one of the keynote speakers. Not only did she touch my heart before she touched the microphone, but I knew instantly that I needed to have her in studio with us to share her story, her authenticity, and her transformation, because I truly believe it will help many of you at home. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Elizabeth Correia to our table. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Margaret.
A transformational coach and speaker, and the author of If You Played in My Playground.
Yes,
welcome.
Thank you.
You know, when I heard you speak at the Circle of Hope, I mean, you had everyone captivated from the minute you opened your mouth. But what struck me the most about the way you told your story was that it was real, it was raw, it was hopeful, and it was also so empowering, not just for yourself, but you said it to me personally. You're here to help serve others so they too, despite what they've been through in life, can have the skills to move forward.
Yeah.
Will you be so kind to share some of your story with all of us like you did that day at the Circle of Hope?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me, first of all. When I say, you know, just how humbled and honored I feel to be able to use my story to serve others, I think it's every day. I wake up and I'm like, is this real? Is this happening? Like, is this really what I'm doing and where I'm at? And I think it comes back to the fact that I didn't go looking for this. You know, it wasn't something that I planned out to do. You know, I'm going to use my story and I'm going to change lives. I'm going to serve communities. And it definitely wasn't something I went looking for. I discovered this platform, this gift, this calling while fighting for my own life. You know, while fighting through my own life, I discovered this gift of mine, you know, to like, okay, all of that happened for a reason. And now you've got to heal through it and you've got to get past this so that you can inspire and encourage and empower other women and girls, which is predominantly what I work with, to really just crack open their hearts and deal with those unresolved issues so that they can go about life living full, you know, full of love and joy and purpose and life.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to really hear about this playground that you're referring to and what brought you here. Can you tell us, and I know you said it with such passion and conviction, can you tell us about the turning point and what ended up happening? You didn't have an easy upbringing.
No.
It was not easy.
No.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, no, definitely not easy. I was born and raised, you know, in the projects in downtown Toronto, government housing, poverty, like abuse, every form of abuse. So it was, you know, home was just, you know, there was physical and mental and emotional and sexual as well. And that abuse started as far back as I can remember, you know, 5 or 6 years old. And so elementary was really, really difficult for me. And then I ended up in foster care, and within the first 6 months, I was 14 of being in care. I lived in and out of like 12, 13 homes, out of garbage bags. So that was really hard. I went to so many high schools. I really just became a product of my environment, you know, because that abuse wasn't dealt with in childhood. I was going into my adulthood with those scars and that pain, and my teens were really, really hard. Crime and you name it. Like I just probably got caught up in everything, and that went on for quite some time. And then when I was 22, my boyfriend was murdered in front of me, and he died in my arms. And I believe it was after that where I started to want more for my life. I just didn't know where to start. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to turn to. It's not that I was alone. I felt alone. Even though there were a couple of people, like I got pregnant at 16 and had my son by the time I was 17. And so his mom, which was grandma, she was there for me and did her part. But just deep down inside, I felt so broken and so worthless and useless. And that came from, not dealing with the core of what was really happening, just kind of bearing it under and acting like it didn't happen. And I'm just going to go on with my life. And every day was a fight. So I was like literally fighting to stay alive every day, from childhood. And then my 20s were also difficult. I was trying to find myself, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, what I could do. I felt like I was a high school dropout, so I was like, well, what do I do? And and who's going to want to hire me, and who's going to want to love me, and all these issues pertaining to self-love and self-worth. And that went on in my 20s, and I would say it was in my later 20s that I started to discover some sense of purpose. I knew that I had gone through all those things for a reason. I just couldn't figure out what it was. Yeah. It's like, why did I go through all that? And I survived. I survived the unthinkable, the unimaginable. But I survived, and it was like, okay, well, what next? And the first thing I did, which is where because one of the things that happened, like I do believe that all forms of abuse cause this, but sexual abuse in particular, it steals your voice away. There's something about it that it causes you to go into like silent mode, because everything's a secret. You can't tell, you can't talk, you better not if you do. Like, whereas like the mental abuse and the verbal abuse, those things don't really come with that. I mean, there are cases where they do, but sexual abuse in particular, especially if it's a family member, for me it was my father. And so my voice, I lost my voice as a little girl, and I rediscovered my voice while I was writing my memoir.
Right.
That was where I was like, whoa, like this happened? Because I buried it all.
Yeah.
I forgot about so much of it. I'm like, oh my God, like I survived that. The fact that I survived that and that and that and that at 11 and 12 and 15 and 17 and 22. And I was just like, okay, there's purpose here. I couldn't identify it yet, but it started with writing that book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, you also shared, and I know you're going to want to hop in here, Todd, you also shared that you had a medical event happen that was a pivotal turning point in your life. Can you share that and everybody's pivotal point is different.
Yes.
Yours happened to be extremely powerful. Can you share that with everyone?
Yeah, I think up until that day, December 26, 2011, which wasn't that long ago. I think up until that day, I was kind of just like breezing along, I was doing this woman's empowerment work.
Okay, stop right there.
Yeah.
That's a mic drop
clarification.
moment.
Yeah.
Say that again.
I was doing women's empowerment work.
Not
being.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Yeah.
Let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but it was just,
no,
it was a nugget I needed to hear.
Absolutely. We could talk about that all day.
And we can have another podcast about that. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
No, yeah. So it was, up until that point, that's what I was doing. A lot of doing a lot of busyness, a lot of trying to prove a point.
Look
to
at me.
Everyone who said I couldn't do it, or I couldn't be, or I would never succeed, or I wouldn't survive, or I'd, get swallowed up by the streets, and just all those stories that I'd hear as a young girl, as a teen in my 20s. And so I had a point to prove. And I knew that I loved doing what I was doing, which was girls' empowerment, motivational speaking. I was speaking in detention centers and youth shelters and schools and classrooms. And Also doing some women's empowerment work as well, so speaking at conferences and seminars and doing my own events.
Right.
But I felt so empty inside, and I still went to bed like, I still feel empty. Like, is this it? You know? I knew I loved what I was doing, but there was something missing. Couldn't pinpoint what it was. And on December 26, 2011, I was home, and I woke up that morning, and I started seizuring, just having seizures back to back. I had no idea what was happening. I had a glass of wine the night before for Christmas, but I knew it wasn't the glass of wine. It was one glass of wine. I had no idea what was going on. And the last seizure that I had, it was the fourth seizure. I was walking back up the steps, and I was at the top. And then I had that last seizure, which was a blessing, I call it, and I fell down backwards, and I flipped a couple times in the air, and I landed on the floor, and my son, my foster son, at the time was leaving out to go to work, and he caught it.
Wow.
He was like, I was an angel in his life. He was an angel in mine, because had he not been there, the doctor said I would have died within an hour, 2 hours max, if I was left on the floor, because everybody else was sleeping.
Right.
And my tongue was twirling, like I was doing some weird things, so I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk. So I was trying to but I couldn't say anything. Make a long story short, they ended up, calling the paramedics, and I was rushed to emerge. And my life changed in a split second. I thought maybe I had epilepsy, because the seizures. And the doctor was like, we need to rush you to Trillium immediately for emergency brain surgery. You have a brain tumor. If we don't get it out immediately, it'll be bad. And it didn't take, it was within seconds where I literally, I still talk about that and I get emotional. Because it's like, within seconds, I remember the first thing I thought of was there's no way I could die, and I haven't lived.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I think that is an amazing opportunity to take a break. You couldn't die because you hadn't lived. We're going to have more here with Elizabeth. Stay tuned, because we're going to talk more about this story, this transformation. It is powerful. It's important to listen to, and it will help you. Stay tuned. We'll be right back here. Let's just do this.
Welcome back to Let's Just Do This. I'm Todd Miller, along with Margaret Wallis-Duffy, and our terrific guest so far, Elizabeth Correia. I was listening to you speak before we talked about your brain tumor, and you talked about wanting to prove something to everybody that said to you, you can't do it. Did at any point in there, were you trying to prove something to yourself? Did that even enter the equation that I want to prove something to me?
There was definitely a mixture of both, because of how much I had heard, you can't do this and you won't do this and you're never going to amount to anything, and you're going to be, I had heard that so much, being I was definitely the black sheep in the family of all of us who ended up in care, and I definitely took some wrong turns. But yes, there were so many moments where I was like, I can do this. I know I can do it. I'm going to do it because I know I can do it. And if I do this, then they're going to see me. And, it was a mixture of that, trying to prove a point to myself that I am worthy of recognition. I am worthy of validation. I am worthy of attention and love and all those things that I didn't get.
Why I also asked was because you also said that you looked back and said, I can't believe I survived that. I survived the unsurvivable or the unthinkable. And it's a moment, I think, that most people would look back and say, I can't believe I did it. I'm stronger than I think.
I think that part came after the brain surgery. I was struggling and fighting so hard to like, as soon as I accomplished one thing, I didn't even give myself any time to celebrate that. It was like on to the next. Okay, what's
Right.
next? Okay, oh my gosh, like I don't want to like die down in their eyes. I don't want to disappear in their eyes. I want to make sure I stay in their face. I want to make sure they see me. I want to. So everything was about a show. Everything was, and then after the brain surgery, it was. I had a lot of time to think because I couldn't do anything for a few months.
Right.
Like I had to retrain myself to pick up a pen and write, to throw a ball. Like I had to literally retrain my brain to do all those little things that we take for granted. But it was in those moments and in that time of like being still that I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm like a freaking trooper.
You are a powerhouse. You are a
Like
powerhouse.
it came to me then.
Yeah.
It took for that to happen. Yeah.
So since your brain tumor, and you said you sort of had felt you were meant for more, and there was purpose. You really felt that the playground, as your book says, that you played in, although different perhaps from many of our playgrounds, you felt that you were meant for more, and then the brain tumor happened. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you go from surviving brain surgery, then coming out the other side, not bitter at all, but so empowered to be a servant for others so they too can see themselves through difficult times. How did that go? How did that work?
It was my time, the 10 days, they said I was going to be in the hospital for, a few weeks, and they released me after 10 days. And I know it's because of my mindset and how positive I stayed within those days and what I was eating and everything changed. I didn't touch the hospital food. I was like all about like the juicing, and everybody brought me fruits and vegetables and soups, like fresh soups. And so I think what happened after that was like I was still long enough to think of the reasons why my life was the way it was. Outside of what my father did, everything that I did was a choice that I made.
Right. Right.
I dated the kind of boys that I dated, the bad boys. The fast money, everything that I got into was a choice that I made, And so I had the time to think about that. Like, okay, it's not that I'm the black sheep. It's not that I have bad luck. It's not that I'm not special and I'm not worthy. It's the choices that I'm making and the choices that I've made. It's the fact that I'm still bleeding while leading.
Wow.
And I was still long enough to think about how I truly wanted to feel.
Right.
And when I was in the hospital, although I was doing nothing, it was like I literally describe it as my heavenly experience. It was so beautiful to a point where I didn't even want to leave. Like I was so rested. I was so in tune with how I wanted to feel and what I was feeling and my thoughts, and like it was so beautiful. And it was in those moments where I was like, I am so done with doing. I want to be.
Wow. So one of the underlying messages that I'm hearing in the way you just said that, there was accountability for the choices that you made.
100%.
You took a look in the mirror.
Yes.
And you got real. And you said, I can be in control of this. But being busy wasn't allowing you to take the accountability. And I think sometimes we really, because we're living in a world where everything has to be so perfect. And we're all so busy. And one of the things you said in your speech at the gala that I loved, you not only stopped to smell the roses, but you looked at every petal and detail on it.
Yeah.
And you don't know my health story, and I don't need to get into that here, but I do think sometimes wrapped in difficulty is a tremendous gift that we can then serve, and that's why my career has gone the way it has. But unless we start to really get real and be accountable for our actions. No one else can do it for us. And you've done it with such grace and dignity and courage that now, as you just said, you're not leading while bleeding.
No.
You are leading with passion and purpose and empowerment, which is really making a difference in the lives of so many young women. Thank you for that.
Yeah. It's funny. The reason why I came up with that roses story is because when I was in the hospital room, my window, I don't think it was an accident, it was facing these two huge trees. And one of the trees, although they weren't roses, the buds, like, there was these little, like, it was winter.
Right.
But there was these little things on the branches that, to me, they look like roses.
Right.
But I lay there in the same, like, and I didn't sleep. I don't know if I shared this that day, but I didn't sleep for 14 days. Like, the doctors actually were extremely worried about me. My sister was worried. My whole family was worried. Like, something's wrong. Like, to not sleep. I'm not making that up. Like, I didn't sleep.
Wow.
And I didn't take any medication, which is what they wanted me to do, and I didn't. So I thought I was, like, tripping out. Like, looking at the tree, it's winter, and there was, like, these red little buddy things on it, and they look like roses, but I was able to, like, look at, like, every little detail, and I had this aha moment. I lay there, and I was like, I would have never looked at this tree this closely.
Any other day?
Like, any other day.
Wow.
And that carried on until now. So I look at, like, even when you're looking at the leaves on plants, like the veins that go through, it's crazy. Yeah, the things that I notice now are like...
Well, and as you so eloquently said, we are human beings, not human doings.
Yes.
And in the society that we live in, it's fast-paced, 24/7, constant in contact, on our phones, sometimes we need to simply be. And unfortunately for you, it took a brain tumor to make you stop and be. But bravo to you for actually taking that opportunity to see things differently and look at the impact that you're making now. That's why you're here on this Changemakers table, sharing your soulful story, because it's going to impact so many others. It's just remarkable to see what you've been through. So tell us a little bit, because we don't have a lot of time left, but a little bit about your book. I think it's so important that people can grab onto something and to get some hope for themselves.
So the book, if you played in my playground, the word playground came from, where I grew up. Everything happened in the playground.
Yes.
I don't know if you've seen, movies with, like, anywhere where there's, like, government housing or, like, the projects. It's a very close community, and it is community. It's definitely, although things were really ugly and tough and painful, there was a lot of love as well. Yes. And so I got the title when I was 18. I was sitting at the playground on a bench with my 1-year-old son at the time. And I turned to my girlfriend and a friend of mine, and I said, one day I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to call it If You Played in My Playground. I got the title at 18.
Wow.
If You Played in My Playground. And she kind of chuckled, and she was like, oh, well, nobody makes it out of here, kind of thing. And I was like, well, I'm going to make it out of here, and I'm going to write the book. And then I said, I'm going to call it If You Played in My Playground, because if you played in my playground, you would see life through my eyes, and you wouldn't judge me another day of your life.
Yep.
Right.
Like, okay, well, why was I making the choices I was making? And,
Right.
So it all had to do with the playground. But everything happened in the playground. The fights, the street fights, the marble competitions, the breakdancing, the skateboarding competitions. Everything happened in the playground. So if you
more than a
played,
playground.
it was more than a playground. But there's a flip side to that. When children think of the playground, what do they think of? They think of playing, correct?
Correct.
We didn't play in my playground. There was no play like that.
Right.
So yeah.
So powerful. You talk about the importance of community, you talk about the importance of connection. You are doing all of that. You know, I would love to have you come back, and this half hour has gone so quickly.
Yes.
Having you share your story is so powerful, and I know it's going to ignite some conversation online and beyond the walls of this studio, which I hope you'll be willing. Maybe we can do something together, even a Facebook Live show, and have some questions answered. If you want more information, or you would like to get that Elizabeth's book, you can go to Amazon to get that. And of course, where can we find you online?
ElizabethCorreia.com, and Instagram, MSS, no I, MSS Elizabeth Correia.
Fantastic, Todd.
Yes.
What a way to finish off a whole bunch of shows that we've taped. This was a powerful one.
Absolutely incredible. Getting in living someone's life right here in 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll certainly
you.
have you back.
Thank you.
And to all of you out there, you know, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories. We want to hear what you would like to have sitting here at this table. How can we help you become the CEO of your health? Powerful stories like Elizabeth's that are so hopeful are meant to put you into action. Reach out to us, whether it's here at Let's Just Do This. Our Better Together mission is going to change Canadians one person at a time. So until next time, on behalf of Todd Miller, myself, and the entire YourTV team, be well, and remember, attitudes are contagious. Is yours worth catching? Bye for now.